I'm Gabriela Fresquez, and this is Radar 2021. We're used to glossing over the topic of mental health. We distract ourselves, keep busy, or use humor to avoid actually confronting it.
I shall call it Twinkle Toes. Or say Twinkle Toes.
I will no longer be using the term PTSD. I will now only be using spicy deja vu.
What doesn't kill you makes you, well, it makes you the proud owner of a bunch of unhealthy coping mechanisms and an alarmingly dark sense of humor.
Evidently, when someone asks, "How are you?" they're not expecting a comprehensive update on your chronic insomnia or clinical depression. So I started seeing a therapist for the first time last year. And once I got past the need to incessantly minimize my seemingly inconsequential problems compared to those of starving children in remote countries, there was a lot to unpack. I know. Me? What? Shocking. Not that shocking. Because months of confinement and financial stress coupled with the risk of viral infection and an overall feeling of perpetual dread has been more than enough to rattle even the most stable among us.
Coronavirus is not only impacting people physically, but mentally as well.
Hand washing, not touching our faces, social distancing. These are all helping to protect us from the coronavirus. But how can we boost our mental health right now?
We're beginning to see light at the end of the tunnel as vaccines roll out all across the nation. But a year of lockdown has taken a toll on our collective mental health.
Within the Latinx community, where the cultural stigma around mental health predates COVID-19, the road to post-pandemic recovery might be especially challenging. Earlier this year, 40% of Latinx adults reported symptoms of depression during the pandemic, compared with 25% of white folks.
The reality of our community as essential workers, we were going out there. And not only that, we were having one or two jobs, plus all the toxic stress and all the issues that we have for decades. All of that actually created a lot of social stress, depression, anxiety. We need to be prepared right now and have an open, sincere conversation in our communities, because usually, like, esa persona está loca, right? That person is crazy. And we have this stereotypes in our brain that we do not collaborate well with mental health. There's like this stigma that if you're sad or you're anxious, you're weak. Unless we start like upping the ante, making sure that we're creating services for our underserved communities of color, these problems will be carried for life.
In Latinx households, it's not uncommon to be raised with a tradition of staying silent about mental health issues to avoid playing a starring role in the neighborhood chisme. The saying, "La ropa sucia se lava en casa," meaning don't air your dirty laundry in public, is another way of summing up that mentality.
Hey, Dad, can I talk to you for a second?
What? Espérate, cállate. No, hit the ball. Eyes on the ball. What happened? Estoy viendo la pelota.
Forgive me for wanting to talk like that while you watch baseball, but
It made me feel like that. ¿Qué pasó?
I just want to ask you something. Okay, it's kind of important.
Oh, no. You got Jennifer pregnant.
What? No.
Wait. You're vegan.
What are you talking? No, I'm vegan. No.
Oh my. Thank you. Okay, what
I
happened?
just want to ask you. You ever felt anxiety?
Anxiety. Muy pocas veces. A mí cuando me molesta el estómago me tomo la pastillita, la tiro en el agua y pisos. Y ahí me arregla.
No. What are you talking about? Not acidez. Not acid reflux. Ansiedad. Anxiety.
¿Eso sabes por qué te pasa eso? Siempre estás en el cuarto andando en the virtual hello everybody who's online. Entonces te entras eso. Yo no, a la edad tuya yo tenía 2 trabajos, la madre tuya estaba en estado.
Okay.
Yo no tenía tiempo para eso, ¿verdad que no?
Never mind. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Dame el favor, caliéntame el café que está ahí, ya que no estás haciendo nada, caliéntamelo ahí, ponte a jugar pelota.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for listening to me. Awesome.
Let's go. Mira, ahí está. Eso es un hombre.
The closest thing we did to confronting feelings in my family was taking a bat to a papier-mâché animal. I'm still not allowed within 500 feet of a piñata store. So why are Latinxes in the U.S. only half as likely than white non-Latinxes to seek treatment for mental health issues? What's holding us back from taking our ropa sucia to someone for a professional assessment?
There is a a stigma, right, that is associated with receiving therapy services. Culturally, it's seen as therapy is only for the true crazy people. We're also raised to believe that feelings are, like the negative feelings, right, are unnecessary, that they stop us from doing the things that we need to do. If we are vulnerable, then we are seen, right, as just lazy maybe, or not wanting to superar, not wanting to get ahead. And so a lot of these stigmas for depression, for anxiety, for trauma are not validated because of these cultural messages. In our field, there haven't been many Latinx therapists. I was the only Latina trauma, EMDR, bilingual therapist in the area, and I felt like there must be more. Like, where's my community? Where's mi gente? So I started a Facebook group called Latinx Therapist. I think that taking care of your mental health, we always have to be open to adjusting and becoming comfortable with discovering new ways to cope, new ways to heal.
Traditional views about family roles can also impact how we approach mental health. For Latinas, the expectation is to be the caretaker of the family, putting the family's needs before our own to avoid being a burden to others. And for Latinos, being vulnerable and discussing emotions doesn't exactly align with the tough machista attitudes many grow up emulating.
I'll be very candid, just as a Latino man, having to live up to a certain kind of expectation. But then you start looking around and you realize that that team that's supposed to help you solve problems, not really there. Your dad walks away and your mom goes to another country. And then you realize that you're supposed to keep up this expectation, but you don't really have a team in place to help you solve problems. If I feel that I haven't done something recently, I start feeling down. And when I start feeling down, it always reminds me that there's something important to do.
Right.
So I try to get back on that, try to accomplish something. And that a lot of times looks like helping somebody with their pain in a positive way. So my journey has really been about trying to help people establish a relationship with positive self-expression and positive release and channeling that emotional energy into creative outlets so that they're able to feel worthy of them, raising their self-esteem by accomplishing something.
For most Latinxes, religion is an integral part of la cultura, which means that rather than seeking outside help for potentially serious mental health problems, some might rely solely on their faith or a religious leader for help. And prayer is great, but you might need to take additional steps if you're really suffering.
Losing yourself could be really easy. In my industry back in the day, it was cocaine, it was alcohol, it was all the parties, all this and all that. And a lot of people suffered. A lot of people suffer. I mean, just speaking for myself, I knew myself enough that I knew what to stay away from. Before I became an actor, I was a social worker in New York City. I was dealing with kids that dropped out of high school. I was dealing with 17, 18-year-olds that had 2 babies by that age. I was dealing with kids going from foster home to foster home. I had to recommend young people to therapy so they could work on their issues. I am not a mental health expert. I have dealt with friends, with families that have had mental health issues. I've done my research. When it comes to mental health in the Latino community, I just feel that there is not enough Latino mental health workers. I think we need more of that because we're very cultural people. I feel that if we are not relating to someone like us, sometimes that becomes difficult to open up. We have to make a statement on behalf of our community to say, hey, you know what? It's okay to open up, to talk, to let your feelings out.
Beyond just the cultural stigma within our community, other barriers prevent some of us from getting the care we need even when we want it. The immigrant experience, which in many ways defines our community, has shaped the way our parents deal with mental health issues. And as a result, it's forced us to reevaluate our own approach, both as children and parents.
a lot of us have a lot of trauma in our histories. A lot of our families were torn apart. There was a lot of violence, and that definitely had an impact on their life and then how they were able to show up for their children later on.
My parents were immigrants from Mexico, and so their priority was survival. You know, they didn't have the mental, emotional capacity to be able to raise me and my siblings in the way that maybe I'm trying to raise my children, right?
And so you see this chain of trauma, of people not being able to be present for their children in the way that they need, and not really having the tools to be parents the way that they need to be parents.
We're told that we have to just kind of pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and échale ganas, you know, and just keep going. And, you know, we continue to create stigma around asking for support.
It's very present in the community, and that when you're feeling depressed or anxious, you just need to get over it and shake it off. And when children misbehave, you just need to discipline them. And a lot of the times that involves physical punishment.
What receiving la chancla or receiving el cinto did for us as children, is it really worth it to sustain something that could normalize continued violence against children?
We know now, right, that there are different ways to parent children in a way that they can become more functioning adults.
And to acknowledge it doesn't negate the fact that our parents did the best that they could with the resources, with the information, with the support, with the communities that they had. They definitely did the best that they could, and a lot of us were harmed in the process.
Rest in peace, chancla culture. Thanks for the memes, not for the trauma. It's hard enough to be vulnerable in your native tongue, much less in a language you're unfamiliar with. And since less than 6% of psychologists in the US are Spanish speaking, language is another barrier a lot of Latinxes face when seeking treatment.
There has been a lack of bilingual resources. So why are people going to feel motivated to go to therapy if there is not a provider that understands their cultural customs and doesn't even understand their language, maybe needs to bring in an interpreter? So there's a lot of just disconnection that can happen there.
And representation of Latinxes in the field of psychiatry in general isn't much better at just 4%.
We need more therapists that are BIPOC therapists, because there are just not enough therapists. It really makes a difference when it comes to understanding deeper levels of how communities work that sometimes are missed when people don't really have more information on our communities.
Cultural stigma and other barriers put the Latinx community at higher risk of persistent or unchecked mental health conditions, which is why a movement to destigmatize mental health within the Latinx community has been populating Instagram and TikTok feeds for quite a while now.
Muchas personas no creen. Depresión, ansiedad es algo que ataca a la juventud, y a mí de grande me dio. Entonces, yo encontré en TikTok una forma de desahogarme, de entretener, de ocupar mi mente y de divertirme. Eso me ayudó bastante para controlar y combatir lo que es, pues, el estado mental, la depresión.
I am so excited because Avi's first paycheck. Avi, are you excited? Yes. Yeah? All right, guys. Avi doesn't know that from now and on, she has to pay me rent.
Nos da miedo aceptar que sufrimos de depresión, de estrés, de ansiedad, y porque nos van a juzgar de que estamos locos. Yo quería mandar un mensaje con mis videos, tratando de decir que yo estoy pasando por esto y que soy una persona normal como todos y que hay solución. Hay que divertirnos, hay que buscar lo que nos satisface, lo que nos hace felices, lo que nos da alegría.
Social media seems like an unlikely place to look to when it comes to starting conversations around mental health. But the way it allows us to engage with our community is undeniable.
I think people that struggle with mental illnesses struggle alone. And, you know, for many reasons, we don't talk about these matters in our families or in our communities. I personally struggled at a very young age with depression and developing an eating disorder. Witnessing the lack of resources, the lack of understanding, and the lack of sensitivity around those that struggle led me to do this line of work. I created Nalgona Positivity Pride as an attempt for one to make visible our stories and our experiences as Black, Indigenous, and or people of color with eating disorders. I see my platform as a disruptor, right? So that's been my main goal of centering the most marginalized groups of people and sharing their content and our stories. Ultimately, treatment, access to professional treatment is not always attainable for our communities. There's still a lot of work to be done, and it continues to be a taboo topic because when somebody is in survival mode, trying to make ends meet, it's very difficult to try to have wholesome conversations about mental health.
For those who might not vibe with traditional forms of therapy, there are alternatives.
So the way that I practice mental wellness is through the concept of holistic mental health. And so part of my work also is about doing non-traditional indigenous practices within my practice itself. Like I do sound medicine as something that recalibrates stress in the body and the mind. I created like a platform that is something that's communal for people to engage in the process of healing. So it's really allowed me to get past at least one of the areas that act as a barrier to our mental wellness in our communities and BIPOC communities, which has been the lack of access to actual mental health content. We've held on to that idea that mental health is just for individuals that are likely to be institutionalized and not just for your day-to-day person. But within the Latinx community, we have just so much that we are holding on to as far as collective stress. So as much as anybody can just hold on to healing methods and maybe speak to elders about what healing has looked like for them and perhaps like practice some of those practices would be really essential just to keep ourselves well.
My name is Dr. Veroshka Williams, and I'm an astrologer and clinical psychologist. I was very intrigued by how through a mathematical analysis of the date, the time, and the place of birth, you could know so much and also help an individual decide and make the right decisions for their life. And we add a second component, which is statistics, to basically sort of project traits of personality, but also moments in time where things can be possible or not. We need to talk more about how is it important not to just wait until you have a problem to look for help. I believe in primary prevention, which is before anything arises. We can do a lot of self-help, but nothing equates professional help. If you want to achieve your goals, you need, first of all, a sound state of mind. You need to work on your emotions, and also you have to heal your wounds from the past.
If you're looking for more information on mental health this week, check out and sign up for the Axios Latino newsletter, a collaboration between Telemundo and Axios, where you can keep tabs on the stories that most affect our community on both sides of the border.
These online communities are a starting point toward destigmatizing mental health issues and dismantling the barriers to accessibility we often face. But ultimately, what's most important is making it okay to ask for help in the first place. For me, therapy has been deeply rewarding, and so far, not a single piñata has been mutilated in the process. Pro tip, carve a hole in the bottom so the candy falls out on the first hit. You're welcome. I'm Gabriela Fresquez for Radar 2021. Thanks for watching Radar 2021. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below and let us know what issues are important to you. Because let's be honest, there are a lot of issues to choose from. So many.